Hey guys, welcome back. So this week we are talking about our first book. We announced it on all of our social media accounts. We are reading 20 Years Later by Charlie Donlea. And we broke this book up into 4 sections. And the first part that we're going to be discussing is part 1 of the book, which is chapters 1 through 15. And it goes through about page, 94? So what'd you guys think of the book so far?
I was a little frustrated in the beginning because I felt like there was so many people and nobody was connecting until the very last bit of the section.
Yeah, like I was getting frustrated is a good word for it too. Because I was just like, I don't understand this book. I don't know what's going on. I'm not sure what the point is. Where are we going with this? And even every chapter was like not far in the future. So I wasn't gaining any ground either. It was just, oh my gosh. Katie, what did you say about it? You said something before we started recording.
I'm not really sure. But what I had to do is, while I was reading every chapter, I went through and I had to write down everybody's name because I couldn't physically put things together.
I had to do the same thing.
This person is this person's husband. This person is meeting this person for whatever reason. Just so I knew.
Chicken scratch notes.
Yeah, just so I knew what was going on and how eventually they will all intertwine.
Was this your guys' first time like annotating and keeping notes on a book that you were going to have to talk about?
That I was going to have to talk about? Yes. Yeah. The only other time that I've ever like really written notes like this was when we read all the Crescent City books. I kept track of the people.
Because there's just so much information.
There's just so much information.
Yeah, so I did on my Kindle. So I've highlighted stuff before. I'll often highlight quotes and things, but this is the first time I've put notes in it because I would highlight it and then click note and type something up that I wanted to remember to talk about now. So this probably is the first. It's like being back in school.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know if I'm technically annotating correctly. Like how,
I don't think there's
I know people are like
correct
way color coded
Yeah,
and
the
stuff,
color
and I was
coding.
like, none of mine is really color coded.
I
But
don't think there's a correct way to annotate.
Whatever works for you.
I think, yeah. And I found it kind of fun because I felt like I was absorbing more of the information.
Yes.
And now I have questions that maybe if I was just reading it straight through, that maybe I would have just not even thought about.
Yeah, like skim over. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know that.
Well, there is
whatever.
even stuff that I wrote down like at the very beginning of the book that I had questions about that by the time I got to the end of this first section that we read, I had already answered it.
Yeah.
So I felt like it had worked out in my favor a little bit, and hopefully it'll continue to do that throughout the book. And maybe there won't be so many people announced and that we have to kind of
remember who they are.
remember who is who.
We can't have new characters because we just figured out
My
these
paper
ones.
is full, okay?
Like the cast list.
I'm not going to lie. So I've picked out a book in the past that people haven't been a fan of. We won't talk about it.
The book of which we never speak.
That everybody tried to give away at that book event.
But I was a little nervous because I was like, this is my book. It's the first one that we're doing.
No pressure.
And I already am like, oh, is it good? Because like I at first was like, I don't know if I really like what we're reading, because it just was, there was so much information kind of thrown at us that I was like, okay, is it all going to come together and make sense? Which I felt like by the time we got to the end of that first part, maybe even like the last couple pages of part 1, it had finally started to come together. And I'm like, I think that this is all going to fit beautifully together at the end. And it's going to make a whole lot of sense. It's just
A slow start.
yeah.
Yeah.
And honestly, it really, to me,
It
said
didn't
it
feel
was
like
a
it
slow
was
start,
slow.
but
No.
I read through it so quickly. And I think that the way that it was written in those kind of like pieces made me read it faster, because I was like, okay, well, that didn't make sense.
Right.
Maybe the next
Maybe this
chapter
will.
will make sense. Well, that didn't make sense. Maybe the next chapter will.
Yes.
And then it started kind of building.
And then we had to stop.
And then we
Like,
had to
it
stop.
finally comes together at the end of chapter 14. You're like, that's all we can read.
Yeah.
So gotta stop now.
So now I got to wait till next
Now,
week.
if you had picked this book up yourself off of a shelf and bought it and started reading, like for me, usually between pages 50 and 100 is when I decide, like, am I going to keep reading this? Do you think if it wasn't for this, would you have kept reading? Me personally, I think I would have, because I got intrigued by the tiny little bits of information
Yes.
that were given by certain characters. Like, oh, it's because it was almost like every chapter did have a question. And when there's questions, I want the dang answers.
Yeah. I think it's not a book that I typically would pick up. I tagged my favorite TikToker in it when we released it. Bree Reads, I think is what her name is on TikTok. And she raves about this author.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And she was like one of my driving points for picking this book because I've seen her review it and I've seen her talk about how like he's just one of those authors that should be talked about more. So I was like, okay, well, it's not a romance. It's not a romantasy. It's not like something that I would be like a pickup feel good book, but I think it's something that I probably would have kept reading. Like if I just would have picked this up, not for book club.
Speaking of Brie, maybe one of the books we should read in the future. She really loves Darcy Coates.
Oh yeah, I saw her.
And I would really like to read one of her books in the future.
Yeah, she talks about her a lot too. So
what about you, Katie, Kristen?
So I probably would stick with it too, because like you said, the little clues that, like, I feel like there were little Easter eggs kind of putting together a little path of, you know, how it was all going to come together. And I did on my Bookstagram, I posted it as one of my currently reading. I'm like, I don't understand this book at all, because I hadn't made the whole way that we read. And my sister-in-law was like, I read it last year. It's going to make sense. And I'm like,
Good.
okay. So I'll stick with it. And then it did. Where it is.
I will definitely say this is a typical book that I may have put down just because there were so many names and things like that. So I feel like I need to go back to my shelf for those books like this that I have given up on, to be like, okay, maybe I just need to write down their names and figure out where their characters are so I can go back to be like, enjoy the reading process. Because it is those bits of pieces of information I want to know, but I might have put it down.
So
But
don't
I'm
read Crescent City then.
Well, but I'm so
notes.
glad that
Take
like we
notes.
are sticking with it. And maybe it's just me. When there's a lot of characters involved and they don't match and you're figuring out whose story's where, I just need to stick it out and write little notes. Whether it's in the book, I did not write in the book. I was nervous to write in books because it's permanent.
But see, that's what's cool, because I know, Kristen, you had said you're not really a rereader, and I only reread like my favorites.
Yes.
So I think writing in the book, it was kind of like, at first I was like, oh, but now that I've started doing it in some of my books that I've annotated, it's like no big thing, because if anybody ever picks it up, maybe they'll see the note that I
That is
wrote.
true. Yeah.
Like on the very first page of the book, I wrote this note just telling myself that I'm already questioning the guy who's, you know, who I thought was going to be our initial main character.
Yes.
Obviously, it comes in different perspective, which I've actually always really liked books that follow multiple
I do too.
perspectives, because you get different sides of the story
Yes.
and it kind of makes you question the narrative. So I think if anybody were to ever pick them up, maybe they'd laugh at my notes, or maybe if one day down the road I do decide to reread it, I can look back on like what I thought then.
Yeah.
Now,
That's
if
fun.
it was
Like
one
I
of
will.
my
Go ahead.
no, if it was one of my favorite books, I don't know if I would feel comfortable writing in it. But but yeah, it took me a minute to feel comfortable to actually physically
And I
write.
didn't actually write
with
in
pen.
mine. I highlighted some things and I left little tabs and stuff, but I wrote in a notebook. But I do see how like it is a little intimidating, because you're like
I paid money for that book.
what if somebody picks
But
up
see-
this book and they're like, oh my God, she
But I
defaced
think I
it.
would love that. Like if I found that in
Yeah.
a used bookstore, I would think it's fun, because I've often wondered, you know, what did somebody else think about it, or what are their thoughts? Like I think that would be really cool to get a book like that that had all the annotations in it.
I've actually seen, I want to say I was at Barnes & Noble, and one of the like really popular book talk books had a special edition annotated version that was annotated by, I don't know if it was by the author or what, but it was an annotated book. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. Like if it was the author, like granted they wrote it.
So Faking Christmas, she gave away her copy.
I did see that. Cindy Steele.
Cindy Steele. Yeah, so she had a bunch of authors' notes through it, and she ended up doing it as a giveaway.
Oh, that's
and that
so
would be
cool.
so cool
That
to
book
get an
was so
author's
cute.
book.
It
Yeah.
was really cute. So what was your okay, so let me go back. Typically when we do book club, we look for book club questions so we can kind of have an outline to follow. And if we can't find questions, then I usually reach out to the author or the publisher and kind of see if we can get some questions. So that didn't happen. I did reach out, haven't heard anything back. So if we do hear back before we finish up with the book, I will, come back with those questions, but couldn't find anything really related to this book. So we kind of just have some highlights that we've hit, but my first thing that I thought when I first started reading was, my initial thought was, oh my gosh, this is going to have a lot of detective police work in it. And is it going to be done well?
A lot of detail in that first bit about
how the body was found, how it went back up.
Again, my little note to myself when the guy was talking about the smell of death and how it was his first homicide case and how he was excited and he didn't know why he was excited. Was it because it was his first
Do you want to read
case?
that?
The line
What
I
he
highlighted?
said, yeah.
Okay. The smell of death filled him with excitement. He hoped it was because this was his first case as a newly minted homicide detective and not for some perverse fetish he had never known he possessed.
I highlighted that too.
And my little comment was, okay, I'm already questioning this guy.
Yeah, like what is wrong with this man? Like maybe he just really loves his job, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, well, part of me was wondering, like, do we got like a Dexter thing going on
I
here?
thought about that too.
Yeah.
So,
And then they didn't name him.
no, they
No.
did not.
Yeah.
So I wrote down detective.
Who is
Question mark.
detective?
And we later were able to come back and fill out who he was. But so I guess he wasn't our main character who we kind of thought he was going to be just because that's where it started out. But Avery is our main character.
So
And-
actually, before Avery even came
Yeah.
in, they introduced
Victoria
Yeah,
Ford,
Victoria.
which at the end of, I think it was just the end of the,
It was the Catskills
yeah,
Mountains, I think.
it talked about that she would be named the killer
Yes.
after we
Yes.
It was
found
within
the
the last-
body with.
yeah.
So it was within that first
That's true.
little
Yeah.
introductory chapter. It brings her into the picture.
Okay, but can we talk real quick about the DNA evidence that linked her to it?
Oh, the urine in the toilet.
Is that real? Can that really?
No.
I questioned that. That was a question.
I just picture these CSI guys in the suits
Like
with like a
scooping it
little
up?
bulb syringe sucking it out of the
Well,
toilet.
I mean, I guess it probably would have some type of DNA
I feel
in
like
it.
we need to Google it. Wouldn't it be? What if there's like toilet cleaner in there though? You know,
Yeah.
like the pods that like stay in there and every time you flush, it like re-cleans. I know it
Yeah.
hasn't been flushed, but wouldn't those chemicals still be there? I feel like this might be something.
and
But
I'm
there
sorry, but
probably
what woman
trace-
doesn't flush the toilet?
I know.
Right?
She was for sure framed.
Oh, well, I mean, of course she talks about in that next chapter
Yes.
that I wasn't there.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But who could have possibly had your urine?
And why?
yeah. And
Well, that is the question.
Yeah, right.
Well, and how would they have her fingerprints? Like if she's not there.
I mean, have you seen where they take like the tape?
Well,
and-
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can totally do that. Like that
Place
one was
and
understandable
blood.
to
Yeah.
me, right?
But the urine, I was like,
Well,
Yes.
yeah, between the blood,
weird.
urine.
Yeah. So I don't know.
It
Just
just
the way
seems
that
like
they-
a lot of
to go through to
bodily
frame.
evidence to collect to frame somebody.
all in one area too.
I mean, I feel like
know.
if I was going to frame somebody, maybe I'd just take a couple pieces of their hair and like scatter it around the house. Like they're
Yeah.
going to bag up hair
Urine
they
and
find,
blood
right?
and- Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh. So then after Victoria Ford is introduced, then we meet Miss Avery.
Then we meet Avery. Yeah. I know. I was trying to go back and look and see like.
It's when she's doing the stunt, right? Is that the first time we see her when she's in the minivan?
Well, I think they had talked just a little bit about
Yes.
her before they
Yeah.
did the minivan. That the minivan was
okay.
in chapter 2.
yeah, they spoke about it in the first chapter because then they talked about how she became on the show for Matt Carter.
Oh, how she became his predecessor
right.
after
Yeah.
he passed.
Yes.
Holy
That's
cow! Were
right.
you guys holding your breath though when she was
Yes,
getting
I was
ready
freaking
to
out.
drop into the minivan? I was like, oh my god! There's
I got more nervous
No
too, and she's
way.
like trying to kick, and then she's like, "I forgot I'm supposed to like take
Take
a
a
breath
breath.
before I
Yeah, a
kick."
deep
And I was like,
breath.
"Oh my gosh, I don't even know who this woman is yet," and she's already gonna die in chapter
Yeah.
I
2.
know. I was reading so fast.
I
was
would
like,
have drowned.
oh my god! I can't believe someone
I
would
feel-
do this. This
I
is
feel like I'm that person that would panic, even if it was a setup situation and I was trying to demonstrate. I would still be that person to panic. I
Me
mean,
too.
I panic when my kid starts choking on food. I'm like, oh my god! And I'm a trained professional.
Yes.
I know what to do. Like, I'm like, somebody help me!
Yeah, I would have panicked. There's
No doubt about it.
way. I was panicking
Just reading it.
right.
it.
I know of a character in a book.
Yeah, I wrote down
Freaking out.
holding my breath right now. I did feel like, I don't know if you guys got this but that it was like a little repetitive with how she kept saying that she had made the show and she deserved more money and blah, 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 blah. And she kept going on and on and on. And I was like, she's only been on the show for
Probably
a
less than
season.
I was irritated by that too.
Yes.
And the scene where she's on the beach talking to like the producer or whoever it was and like demanding, and I'm like, I mean, that good for you, girlfriend. I
mean,
guess
she's
like
not
if you're
wrong.
She's
right,
not,
like for
but I just
demanding
felt like
your
that-
worth. But the
I
back
was
and
like, why
forth,
is this
A little
continuing?
excessive. Like,
it was a lot.
Yeah.
Or pushing. Like it was more of like it's this or no.
Yeah, because her agent wasn't even on board
He
with her the
didn't
last
wanna
time.
do it.
He's like, I think
Yeah.
you should just take what they're
Yeah.
giving you.
Well, then also at the beginning of chapter 1, it talked about how she was going to be chasing some leads in New York and kind of give the hint that she was kind of hiding something. And why would she be in a spotlight
I know.
position if she was trying to hide?
Hiding in plain sight. That's
Right.
what they call it, right?
And at this point, we didn't know why she was
Right.
hiding. But I feel like once we, obviously at this point now, we've found out why. But I feel like if I was hiding something like that, why would I do that? I would not.
Yeah, be in the public eye. I'd be so afraid of getting caught or somebody figuring it out and like splashing it all over. Like Avery
Which
is
I
actually.
have a feeling is going to
Yeah.
happen.
So I wrote down, like, how has no one connected who she is? Because they said it had only been 3 years and she was an adult
When it happened.
when it happened.
Yeah,
So
I
I guess
think-
we should just say what happened. Her dad was in charge
Of a
Yep,
huge,
of a huge
Ponzi
company.
Ponzi
It was a
scheme.
Ponzi scheme.
And I think ended up
like billions of
like
dollars from
$50
people,
billion
right?
dollars of people's investments. And
And he was arrested and then he went on the run.
yeah, I'm not totally sure I grasped how
So he was even a flight risk, but they still let him out on bond.
On bond, and then
I just don't understand how that can happen. You'd think that
Yeah.
with somebody that's a big deal. And you've got the FBI involved. How do they just let him slip?
Unless somebody in the FBI was involved.
Dun, dun, dun. I hadn't thought about that.
I didn't either.
But my thought process was maybe if she was younger when this had happened and it had been multiple years that like people wouldn't recognize her because
Right,
she
if
was
she
a
was
child.
a child. Yeah.
And now she's an adult. But
But she was in law
she was
school.
right.
in
and
her
getting
20s.
ready to start practicing. And then,
Yeah.
nope, but, of course she
And it's only been
couldn't.
3 years. So like unless you had like a full identity change, don't you think people are going to recognize this person?
she did travel completely across the
She
country.
did.
I know, but that something that big probably made national headlines.
Yeah.
And they said that she even said that his picture of when they were taking him out of their house in his pajamas. in handcuffs was all over national news.
But she wasn't in
But
those
she
pictures.
wasn't.
But don't you think that reporters
She
are
changed-
going to
she
had a
dig
different
into that
name.
family?
Yeah.
I mean, with internet research, you could find anything.
I just think that something that big, people hyper focus on stuff like that, and they blow up every single thing about their families. So
If
like,
they did that, then we wouldn't have a story.
I know, I just
Just
that
work
part
with us, Kayla. Like,
that part to me just didn't seem very believable. I'm like, 3 years have only passed, and she was an adult when it happened. And
Yeah. I can see that.
But I can understand though from the fact that she changed her name completely because she was in journalism and it was
Well-
already established before she went
Yeah,
over
But
to
her name isn't completely changed.
yeah, she still has her.
She goes by her middle name.
Correct. Well, her last name though.
yeah,
Her
she's
last
changed
His
name
last
is
name's
changed.
different.
because it's basically her pen name.
Yeah.
Like what
Yes.
they had used for her
Yep.
byline and stuff.
Because she used that once she traveled over. Because she worked for the Times in Louisiana.
So she'd already
in
had-
LA, California. So
Yeah, she already had an established different identity that didn't match her dad's name. So I think that's partly what helped
That
it.
maybe
I
it helped
agree.
her. Okay.
So then it goes into talking about her at her boss's home for this event, and her boss's boss and her boss confront her about her pay and what she believes she's worth for all the views and all of the money that she's making this company. But I got this like really irky feeling because she was being confronted by these two men alone on a beach.
And because she was
At a
with other people
gala,
and she
and
had
they
them
just
leave.
left.
Yeah.
So that kind of got irky for me, but I feel like that whole scene, like something is leading that. I feel like there's something there, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Like why would they make such a big deal about that? And why is she making such a big deal about all this money that, you know, she thinks she deserves? Which, again, like, I do think that women don't get paid as much as men, and she probably has a lot of that, you know.
Okay, so I don't think I'm jumping ahead too far in the story, because when she starts making her trip, she stops at that camp and talks to the woman who was basically like a second mother to her. And talks about how, Connie, thanks, how she'd lost so much money. Do you think she's trying to get all the money back to pay Connie back?
I mean, it wouldn't surprise me.
Well, I mean, she bought a Range Rover and she bought a sailboat.
Well, she's looking out for herself first, yes.
Did she? She bought a sailboat, or the sailboat?
No, the sailboat was her
The
dad.
sailboat was her dad
For her 21st birthday.
She was out on
A
it with her.
$3 million sailboat she got for her 21st birthday.
But that was the one that sunk, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
But then she says something else about having a boat now that she has.
That's
docked.
Connie's.
I thought she had another one though. She's mentioned. I thought I
didn't
read.
catch that part.
Keep talking. I'll look.
But no,
up.
that's
At the
I didn't,
marina. Here,
She'll find it.
I didn't think about her
hold
trying to
my
make
book.
money for that though until you just said that, when you were talking about how she's trying to get her money up and why would she need that much
I
money.
definitely felt
wonder.
like they made a big point. Of
Yes.
she's trying to get
And
money.
if it's not for Connie, for someone else, like maybe there's some goodness in her
Chapter
heart where
11.
she feels she needs to pay people back for what her dad did. I don't know. Something to think about.
So
We've only made it to chapter
also
14.
speaking of money, well, I see, and again, I don't want to jump too far ahead,
know, sorry.
but there's a portion. She makes it very clear that she hates her dad. She hates everything that he is, and she feels like her entire childhood was a lie,
Yep.
pretty much.
Yes.
And I feel like at the very end of this section, you know, our little detective and his little friend are having this conversation, and they're convinced that somebody
Yeah.
else is in play here.
Yeah, I've been helping.
And it
the
makes
dad.
me wonder if maybe
It's her?
it is her, because obviously he's going to need money because he can't make his own.
Yeah.
But if she hates him so much, why would she
It's a good question.
why would she go there?
So did anybody else pick up the little tidbit about Connie?
What was it?
Nope.
That
What are we
I
talking
guess
about?
not.
Connie was Avery's surrogate mother.
Oh, I did see that.
Yeah, but I
So-
thought I thought that was more or less like
The mom she
the
never
mom
had.
that she never had.
Like when her
Okay.
mom was gone. I don't think she
'Cause-
actually birthed
Yeah,
her.
I
But when
thought the
you
same
say
thing.
surrogate,
Okay.
that is the definition.
Yeah.
That's what I
of a
assumed
surrogate.
because I
is-
questioned it in my head, and I was
I
like,
did
"Well,
too, but and then I thought she probably was just
Yeah, because I
because
reread
they
it in the
sent them
context.
there every summer.
But would you call somebody a surrogate, or would you call them something else?
I don't know.
because that
Maybe
was
it'll
all
come
within the
back to
same
it.
chapter."
It does say on 73 that she has her own boat. That she
Oh, I missed that then.
Yeah, I think I missed that too.
Avery owned
good
a
job, Kayla.
35-foot Catalina that she docked in Santa Monica and sailed nearly every weekend.
And that was talking about current, or that was back in
Current.
the past?
Oh, is that when the
When they were out, when her and Connie were out sailing that day, because she said she was inspecting the boat, and Connie was telling her, and she was kind of nervous. But anyways, so going back to this Victoria Ford girl, what did you guys think about the DNA evidence kind of thing? Like how they have figured this out?
I mean, again, I think we kind of thought it was a very strange thing that there were so many pieces of evidence from somebody who's hired this lawyer to.
No, I meant like how they discovered her DNA 20 years after 9/11.
Oh.
Okay, so
Sorry.
Different question.
the way the story goes,
question.
she's in her attorney's office
yes
trying
that's
to
important.
talk about all the money that she's going to have to come up with to be able to defend herself. And then, 9/11 happened, and
Because her lawyer's office was in the World Trade Center.
yeah, I mean, she
78th
made it. Yeah, they
floor?
made a very important point that she had to go up that elevator and up the escalator. and-
79th floor.
So I think that is part of the reason why they kind of mentioned in the book that the case just kind of fell apart, not necessarily because of lack of evidence, but because this big thing happened.
Yeah.
And when your prime suspect was in the building and incinerated.
Yeah, and that's what they didn't know. I mean, I don't know how much they knew, but the technology now, 20 years later, that they're taking like the fragments and pieces and basically are able, like, I actually found that really fascinating.
too.
When
That's
they
why I was
said
asking
how
what you
it was
thought.
used. I was like, that's so interesting because I do watch a lot of true crime and I am really into DNA testing, especially cold case solving. So to have them talk about this, of how they use it, I thought was so crazy, but so cool too.
Yeah, we watch a lot of shows like that too, and I was like,
And how
that's
they
interesting how they like figured that out. So
And I was going to say, and how they like broke it down to make it where any reader could understand what they were actually talking about and doing was really nice.
it was easy to follow.
Yes.
Yeah. So then, who do we get into, guys?
Then we got into Walt,
Oh, wow.
Mr. Jenkins, who
So
is
he was the
now
the detective.
Are we talking about his trip back yet?
no.
Okay.
So initially he's in Jamaica, sitting in a bar drinking rum.
Lots of rum.
Lots of
And we don't know why this guy at this point, we don't know why this guy is important or why he's, sitting on a beach in Jamaica in his like mid 40s, young and in his prime of his would-be career, sitting on a beach drinking rum.
Yeah. So why was he forced into retirement? Which we don't know.
We do at this point.
Oh well.
We
Now
get
we
more
do.
details about it later.
Yeah.
But we've all read it. I think
later
it's
in the
fine.
chapters.
go ahead, talk about it.
So he was on a case and got shot in his jugular and in his heart. And I guess after something big like that, they kind of forced him into retirement. I had wondered when they talked about how his drinking had been a problem. I had thought like, oh, maybe he kind of like went alcoholic mode and that is why they forced him to retire. But I think it might have been more like the trauma of
Well, because his partner was shot.
Yes.
and passed. Yeah.
So that was
And they
hard for him,
mentioned his
too.
love interest was part of that. So like this Megan Cobb.
Mm-hmm.
They never really said why she was part of that, but
And he talks about how much he loves her and why they can't be together and
Yes.
why he hates her. Well, they didn't really, go into huge detail about why he hates her. You're
No.
smiling at me like I missed something.
No, I'm not smiling. I was smiling at you because I was drinking my water. Excuse my frog
So I'm
voice.
very curious what is going to go on there because, we just can't be together. And I only get to see her once a year when I travel to New York for this survivors convention that he attends.
that he goes just so he can
Yes.
see her. Like
Right.
that's his
Well, that
reason
is his only
to
reason
go.
for
He
going.
hated her, but then there was also a spot where it mentioned that she was the reason for the shooting. It just didn't say why.
Yes.
So I'm curious to see
Like,
what's
what
going
was
to
the
happen
reason?
there and why this woman that he got involved with is the reason he almost died.
Yeah, so there's just lots of stories that are separate that I feel like are all going to come together.
Well,
And by the end of the
Section.
of the part 1 with the chapter 14, it's slowly starting to put everybody connecting dots.
So when Jenkins's boss, the FBI boss, finds him
in
Oh,
Jamaica
yes.
drinking
In
rum.
Jamaica.
drinking rum, we learn. What do we learn, guys?
That they want him to come back and work.
Because why? Because he was the investigator
That found the dead guy in chapter 1.
and was investigating Victoria Ford.
And that was his first
First
investigation.
homicide case.
Yes. Which is what's cool that he's going almost back to his roots.
Yes.
20 years.
Later.
Yeah.
Sounds like a title for a book. Well, and the thing I noticed about Walt, which was such a little thing, but enough that I highlighted and made a note, is that his dog's name is Bureau.
I thought that
Yes.
was adorable.
It took me for a while. I'm like, oh, because he worked for the Bureau.
Yes.
So he still has like FBI in his life. Like
Yeah.
even though they forced him to retire, it's like he never really let go.
Yeah,
He didn't seem to have much hesitation
to go back.
to go
No.
back. He was like, okay.
I think at the beginning, though, when the boss shows up and he was like, how'd you even find I was here? Because the other guy he saw at the
Yes.
hotel was like, oh, it's been so long since I've seen you, man. Like, what's your phone number? Let's catch up.
clearly
anybody your
wasn't as
phone number
careful
like
as
that,
he
but-
thought
right?
he was.
It's like, that's because I gave it to that guy.
Are we going to talk about the postcard?
Oh, yes, the postcard that she got from her, that Avery got from her
from
father.
dad.
Postcard.
Yeah. We didn't really talk about her dad all that much.
No,
so.
I thought you guys were going to circle back to that. And I was like, with the boat. And everyone was
Let's
like,
go,
wait,
Katie.
like,
Okay, Katie, tell us about the postcard.
why me?
So she brought it up.
Oh, sorry. So it was Connie and Avery, I believe, right? On the boat?
Mm-hmm.
And they were out on the boat. And when they parked, was it what? So I'm going to get this back. Should we start from the beginning? So Avery's dad disappeared, Garth, after posting bond, and he stayed hidden for 3.5 years. And then Connie and Avery were out in her boat and they parked it. And when they came back, there was a postcard. And I didn't write all of the verbiage on the card, but at the very bottom, there was 777.
Yes.
And they know, well, they lead on that he is located, like she knows he's located in the U.S. He didn't go to Mexico. He didn't go to Europe. He didn't go to Australia because that's where the FBI thought that he might be trying to head out. And now Avery knows because of that clue of 777
That he's still
that
here.
he's in the U.S. and she knows where he's located.
Yeah, so I wrote a note on that. I was like, what is this?
Yeah.
Is this an area code?
Yeah.
Is it code for something else? Like, what is the 777? Like, did they have a code they were going to use? Like, 911, 411, like all the numbers that mean something, right? Like, did this mean something to them? What's the meaning?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess we'll have to find out as we keep reading. Right. Another thing that really kind of like popped out to me was when she constantly is saying that she, again, she hates her dad. She wants
Yes.
nothing to do with her dad. And then the FBI agents seem to think that she is aiding and abetting her father. So I probably should have looked a little closer at some of the date and timestamps, but like, is that after she's come in contact with this postcard and maybe she has done something?
Well, I
So
don't
they're
know.
questioning it when they did the
questioned it
7-7 was
after.
chapter 11. And then when
Yeah.
the FBI were questioning it was at the very end, which was chapter 14.
Yeah.
So June 23rd is chapter 14.
Chapter 11 was June 19th, 21.
So,
So not a lot could have happened in those few
No.
days.
so they've been putting it together for quite some time.
So what could Avery have been doing? Or should I say Claire? Because we've discovered her real name is
Right.
Claire.
Well, if
so-
it goes back to you thinking about her getting money for her dad, maybe there was some way she was wiring money to him some way. Maybe they found some kind of evidence there.
Or
Yeah, but
maybe
she
she
kinda
is
said
sending
that-
it to Connie and they think maybe
Yeah.
she's sending it to her dad.
Because she said she hadn't known anything about her dad
Right.
And-
like,
Until the
this
postcard.
postcard.
Right.
Yes.
Which they said the
So-
postcard had come in the mail.
Oh,
and
did
she
it?
had ripped
Sorry.
it up and thrown it in the trash can immediately. And then she said, later, though, the untamable lure of unconditional love found her, and the natural bond that ties daughters to their fathers emerged and forced her to tape the pieces back together and read her father's words.
Oh, I thought it was out on the boat. My bad.
Yeah, so I guess she had a really close relationship with her dad growing up, and like, even though she hates what he became,
Did she have a close relationship with them though?
I don't
because
think
he
they really
talks
said.
about the book talks about how all these because he was having an affair, all these late nights, all these workings,
But
always
he kept throwing
going
money at them
away.
and buying her
Yeah,
stuff.
so
That's how he made up for it.
I wouldn't think necessarily that they had maybe like a bond, but it's her dad, you
Yeah.
know. It's your dad, and kids most of the time love their parents unconditionally. Now, when they do something as cringy as that, I'm not sure
Yeah.
that love will be as strong.
Enough.
But I definitely think that there's probably something there because it is her dad.
I agree. So I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions that need to be answered at this point.
unfold.
There is a lot to unfold.
So I guess you guys listening, if you have questions of stuff that we didn't talk about or things to add to the things that we talked about, feel free to chime in on our social media pages. And
any thoughts maybe you have of where this book could go. And
what does 777 mean?
Yeah.
right.
We'll have some posts out that have some feeler questions on it and stuff. So comment back on those and we'll get to reading this next section, I guess.
Do you have the pages offhand or the chapters, pages, whatever, however you want to go by, of the next section? I believe it's chapter 15 through
21, I think. That doesn't sound right.
Well, that's not very long.
No, I felt like a lot of the chapters were very short
They are.
because I think there's like,
Just a
80
few
or
pages.
90 chapters in this book.
Yeah, my Kindle, like every time I get to a new chapter, it'd be like 3 minutes left in chapter, like 1 minute left. They're really fast chapters, which to your point earlier, Erica, I like that you brought it up and I wanted to reemphasize it. How you said, annotating it kind of made you absorb more of the book. Because I think so many times when we're reading as entertainment or even with audiobooks, it's kind of just going and you just keep going. But when you take the time to annotate it and take notes, you really are absorbing it more and kind of comprehending it more too.
I mean, clearly I still missed a few things.
I know, right?
Obviously, I did. Postcard.
It looks like it's chapters 15 through 30.
Okay.
So those will be the chapters that we read and discuss next, guys. So we can't wait to hear your thoughts and opinions and go through these next bit of the book.
Yeah.
Do we want to give any predictions of what we think is going to happen in this next part?
Sure. Go ahead.
Oh, I didn't mean me. Okay, so Avery's on her way to meet Victoria's sister, right? That's why she's going
Emma.
to New York. Yes. So I imagine we will get more details from Emma, what Emma has to say about Victoria. I feel like to keep the suspense up, I'm wondering if Emma and Victoria had a rough relationship. Like, is Emma going to be like, oh, my sister, oh. I think that's going to happen. I also think that Walt and Avery are going to get together.
I had that feeling
yes.
too.
I wonder if they're going to fall in love. And then I wonder if Walt's going to turn and be on Avery's side instead of the FBI. That's possible. I know these are out there, but like we've got to make big predictions, right?
Right.
So those are things I think are going to happen.
I definitely think there's going to be something because obviously they're being pretty much being forced in proximity.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think it's going to be like a romance type where it's like
A girl can dream.
I definitely think that they will have some sort of bond. Being as, he's in this kind of like crappy situation in his life and she's trying to hide her past and trying to, hopefully I would think she's trying to make a better future for herself. So I definitely think there will be something there. As far as Victoria Ford goes, I think that it hinted that she was being framed, but I think she probably knew a lot more and they're going to uncover that somehow. How they do, I don't know because all they have is bone fragment. But I think
Unless maybe she told her sister.
Maybe she has a hidden diary left somewhere.
I think her and her sister probably were close and that her sister's going to uncover that there was something really terrible that had happened and she was being framed and like she had the proof, but there was really nowhere to go with it because everybody involved was dead and
9/11 happened and everybody's focus was elsewhere.
Katie, what are your predictions?
I don't know if I truly have any predictions yet, just because I'm trying to let it like piece together. I want to read that next chapter to see if it pieces anything to hint. But I think Avery and Walt becoming close together, I don't know if they'll go romantic. However, I think there is going to be something there that will bring them two together. But something has to happen with Victoria because that's where the story started.
Right.
So like we have to piece that, obviously, other than the DNA aspect of it.
Right? There's so much physical DNA, but there's no story there. So until we hear that story, we can't, I don't think, make any like real.
Right. Without a motive, it's just circumstantial evidence.
Right.
That's right.
Maybe they were besties.
It's possible.
Or maybe she was friends with his wife. Was the guy that died, he was married, was he not?
Mac?
I don't think
I don't
so.
know, the guy that died at the
know.
beginning.
I don't think so.
I don't remember.
Was it a bachelor pad? I feel like I recalled something. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think he was married, but maybe. All right, well.
She was married
Yeah, she was married
and
and cheated
having
on
an
her husband.
affair. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Got it. See, like you can read and annotate and you still
He still missed things.
miss a bunch of crap.
All right.
All right, well, we will be back next week for you guys with our next section of the book. So thanks for hanging with us.
Read along.
Stay tuned.
All right. Bye, guys.